And so what the meditation appears to do is to just help us relax out of the way of our most natural selves and our most natural state. And I think that ultimately, what's going to happen ultimately is these mind-body practices, these meditative practices, they're going to be taught in schools all over the planet, and that's what we're pushing.
Why aren't they doing it now, Bill?
Yes, that's a good question.
And out. Big breath in. Unloading. Just letting go of everything that we stirred up here, right down into the earth. Good. One more. We teach Tai Chi and Qigong for the University of Kansas Hospital's Turning Point Center for Hope and Healing. When you start investigating the medical research that's been done on Tai Chi, you find that it makes the brain bigger. It's being used to help treat heart disease successfully, lower high blood pressure, help with type 2 diabetes, anxiety, depression, chronic pain issues. There's just a whole host of things that Tai Chi's been shown to help with. Shadow patterns.
After doing about 3-4 months of Tai Chi, I was no longer in pain. I was moving freely. I could mow my own lawn if I chose to, which often I don't. And I canceled the surgery on the other hip. It's just been like a miracle for me.
If they could put a money value on what is being done here, it would be like a pill that was worth millions and millions of dollars.
All that stuff.
Yeah.
But you didn't see this picture, which was the prototype for what became the Global Consciousness Project. I asked people to take data, send it to me, put it all together, and made the red trace that you can see. It was unlikely with odds of 1 in 100 or so. And that encouraged us to go ahead and to create a network, which ultimately had about 150 or more people hosting one of the devices, these random number generators, in various places around the world, signified by the little red spots. The most we ever had running about at one time were about 75, but a lot of people participated over the years. Now, you've seen this picture already. It's a almost typical kind of result. This is what we call a cumulative deviation plot. It just shows the history of the departures from expectation. We predict that it'll go up. And starting at about 9 or so in London, it really began going up gangbusters, big time. And this sort of confirmation of the hypothesis that we set, which is that when really large numbers of people come together, we'll see some kind of correlated activity in the Global Consciousness Project data. And about 70% of the time, not 50%, as you would expect by chance, but 70% of the time, we got exactly what we were predicting. Now, that may not sound like very much, but in fact, it turns out to be a lot if you compare it with what's expected over a long period of time. So what I should say is that we have a sort of small effect, but if we persist in doing the experiment again and again, small effects add up. We know that from all kinds of aphorisms. Keep at it, be patient, do your work. Eventually, we find an accumulation of experimental outcomes that produces a line like the red one in this picture. You can compare that with a cloud of gray simulations, or you might say controlled data. They're completely different universes. So in other words, we have a real effect. Why does it happen? What does it really mean? We've been in recent times doing a fair amount of completely independent analysis, partly to try to distinguish between the idea that all this is just an experimenter effect. If we choose the right events, or if we choose the right time to start, we'll get these results even though there's nothing happening. That's to me a remarkably unlikely prospect as an explanation. I think it's more like that we have, as Roland was talking about, fields of consciousness. Actually, I'm thinking even more esoteric than electromagnetic fields, something like information fields, the kind of thing that David Bohm used to explain what happens in physics.
Bill, I'm going to have to apologize. I'm usually kind of negative and cynical on the program. You're bringing a level of optimism and a fresh breath of air. You're saying there are solutions. These people don't want to hear about solutions at 1 o'clock in the morning.
Well, it's about this shift in the way that we see ourselves on the planet. And so there's this raucous action adventure that's going on with these individuals who are going through these big changes in their life that are being demanded of them to kind of evolve into a new way of being. And it reflects what's happening on a macrocosmic level with the whole planet, because essentially in my lifetime, in many people's lifetime, we've gone from about 2 billion people after World War II to almost 7 billion people now. And so the world has changed dramatically in every way, but our way of thinking is still kind of the same way. So in this book, there's a shift going on in human consciousness where we're being demanded to kind of see ourselves as homemakers of the planet as opposed to conquerors of the planet.
I'm reading it, and it's like there's so much truth here. And you have, some great people who've read the book and written reviews about it, too.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm totally amazed.
Can we really
Deepak
see
Chopra.
vast drops of violence just by changing things within our lives? In a moment, Bill Douglas joins us. His latest book is called The Gospel of Science.
These techniques, what they do is they bring your brain into the alpha state. Normally, our brains are vibrating in a busier beta brainwave state. But when you go into these, when you use these techniques, and they're being evolved and improved with technology, as we speak. But as you go into these states, into these alpha states on a regular basis, it actually changes the physical structure of the brain. And one of the things that it does is it shrinks the stress and fear part of the brain. It actually physically shrinks the stress and fear part of the brain.
That's interesting.
Yes, and it enlarges the empathy and compassion parts of the brain.
It's kind of captured the world's imagination for well over 20 years now, and it reaches millions of people. I mean, each year it's getting more and more. So this vision of a clearer, calmer, healthier planet that is possible by spreading Tai Chi and Qigong and other mind-body practices into society at all levels. And this has been recognized worldwide, and we're going to get into this because Bill has written a book, The Gospel of Science, that has got lots of facts to be able to back up what we're stating here.
Tai Chi group had 50% more helper T cells than the control group did. And that is huge, 50% more helper T cells, because helper T cells, front line of defense, they consume virus cells, and it's that natural immunity that we build inside. And that's a big deal. During the COVID crisis, one of the studies that they did found that they looked at the frontline healthcare workers that were exposed to, all the different variants, alpha, beta, delta, and now Omicron. And what they found was that the healthcare workers that caught COVID, the frontline healthcare workers that caught COVID, had lower helper T cell and helper T cell and CD4 cell counts. And the research shows that Tai Chi and Qigong boost T cell counts, helper T cell counts, CD4 cell counts. So this is a huge thing. Just that one thing, you would think that would bring like a flood of money in to start studying mind-body practices, because meditation and yoga, from the research I've done, the big five, Tai Chi, Qigong, meditation, yoga, and mindfulness training, all these things boost your immune system. So you'd think there'd be a flood of money flowing towards it, but it's not happening.
The solutions are there. They're hanging like ripe fruit from the trees. And the more that we can practice mind-body practices, meditative type practices, the big five, Tai Chi, Qigong, yoga, meditation, mindfulness, it changes our brain waves and it changes our brain structure so that we're no longer driven by panic and division, and we become more solution-oriented. And we also become more elegant, complex thinkers that can find simpler solutions to things. One of the things that happens when we practice these mind-body practices is that science shows that we start to begin to engage in more what's called gamma wave consciousness. And gamma wave consciousness is it's a higher level of consciousness that the science is showing that people who meditate regularly have a much larger propensity to be able to access. And when we're in gamma wave consciousness, and we're not thinking in small, tight, linear consciousness, we're letting the mind kind of relax open, and then we're able to contemplate issues or challenges or whatever with different parts of our brain or mind or consciousness simultaneously entertaining that issue from different angles. And then what happens is we start to see these simple solutions like the ones that I'm describing. And so practicing mind-body practices will help spread this more elegant gamma wave consciousness through society. And then if we educate other people about the mind-body science and what these things can do for them and their lives, then we have more people practicing these mind-body practices. And what the science is showing is that when the more people that you have practicing these mind-body arts, the more people that are going into this alpha brainwave consciousness on a regular basis, what happens is it doesn't just affect the meditators. What the science shows is that it ripples out. Your brainwaves ripple out beyond your skull, and they actually affect the consciousness of the larger population. And there's studies that have been done in cities and in institutions, and including prisons, including maximum security prisons. And what they find is that when they have a certain small number of meditators, it actually improves the behavior and reduces violent crime for the whole society. In fact, in one of the studies in Washington, D.C., they brought in 1% of the population of high-level meditators, and they brought the violent crime rates down about 25% during the period that they had these meditators in the city. And it was during the high crime rate season. And so I have all this data and all this science and all the mind-body science of all these really hopeful, simple, elegant solutions to our future, all backed up by meticulously cited data and science in my new book called The New Second Edition of the Gospel of Science. And so that book is the antidote to the complexity and the nihilism and the pessimism and the limited vision of modern media. Now, why does media not report on solutions? Well, it's because in my book I get into this, and there's data that you can find in there. But what the media has discovered was that if they could get us upset or angry or fearful, it produces stress chemicals. And then what happens is we get addicted to the stress chemicals.
You've got these down-built to a science.
Yes, it has become that. I never thought that it was going to lead me down a scientific path. But when that first hospital class that I did just kind of started that ball rolling.
That is amazing. But simple techniques can just change your life. But you've said that just a few brain-changing techniques could cause a change of the world, basically, a vast drop in violence. How could that happen?
Well, when I did that Folsom Prison presentation,
breathe in each other, there is no garden. apart. I'm the color of time. You're the color